If you clicked this, you know why you're here. It's time for another competitor spotlight. This time, Daphne, the TRX-4 Sport. As with the others, we will be discussing the intangibles of verticality, stablenessitude, my personal favorite, bumpability, swirlability, and of course, X factoring. So let's get a little rolling footage and let's get right into that. Daphne began as a sport kit. I really just wanted the axles. I already had a gearbox, I had shocks, I had most everything to build her. So we went with a Hobbywing 1080, and it's got one of those Amazon aluminum case 2-speeds. And I went with a Torquemaster 21 turn. This was an early on build, so I was still doing the new crawler stuff of let's throw some high KV on there because I'm used to bashing around, so speed is king, right? It would probably have a 27 or maybe a 35 turn paired with that 2-speed. 2-speed's a little bit of an overkill with a motor of that low of turns. Verticality for Daphne is around an 8 because the long travel kit is really better on mixed or broken terrain. For servo, it's the incredibly strong and incredibly noisy Holmes SHV 500. It's loud. For every bit that it's strong, it's equally loud. Let's take a listen here. Yeah, that, like, it never stops. But it is strong. It is unquestionably strong. And fast. So I don't regret it. I just think, if anything, that servo might be a little too much. Keeping it off the ground, I've got the shocks from the Traxxas long arm kit and the softest springs. I think they're oranges and purples from the Axial Capra. And it definitely works. Daphne can keep rubber on the ground in situations where others cannot. And I think part of that is due to the shocks, and part of it is due to the Pitbull growlers, which are just phenomenal on this rig. The growlers have moved around a bit. They've spent time on a couple different builds, and they really found their home here. They do seem to suffer on some terrains, but on broken rock and stuff like this, they're right at home. Stablenessitude for Daphne, I give a somewhat generous 7. She doesn't have a particularly wide wheel track. The long travel, more droop means more travel all around. So she can get a little tippy. But, you know, everything's a trade-off. I love Bauhaus stuff, and I love the Samex titanium links. I seem to be incapable of not buying STRC stuff. I've bought a lot of STRC stuff over the years. I wanted aluminum for the link mounts. The bumpability, good. I think perhaps due to the suppleness of the tires, the Holmes motor has got more than enough torque. Her long suspension can soak up those hops. Velma there, bobbleheading by. As soon as I saw that thing, as soon as I saw Velma in that kids meal, I knew where she was going. And I don't care about the weight. I don't care what it does to the CG. She's staying. So for swirlability, Daphne's pretty good, but you can see her, she peg legs a little bit, gets that front wheel up off the ground. So when you throw some cyclones like that, pre-knuckle weights, she would just flip over. For X Factor, we've got an 8. She does have a winch, at least for the moment. I don't use it very often, but it is neat. Sometimes we get things just because they're neat. And all things considered, with the relatively high stance and the long shocks, she's got a fairly high CG. It's still below the top of the tire. It's right about the bottom of the frame rails, which is about as high as I like to see a CG sit. But even with the caveats of the longer shocks and the little bit of added tippiness, offset quite a bit by the J-Concepts creep body. The Ecto shell might be a little lighter, but the creep is dirt cheap. They go for about $34. I think it weighs 3.5 ounces. And unless she's trying to get into big trouble, Daphne does pretty great. So that's the breakdown for the day. Daphne, what was once a TRX-4 Sport with a 2-speed. And hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for the next one.